This is going to be a little bit hard to watch, but here she goes. Oh. Full power. Hello everyone, my name is Ian and you're watching Big Rock Motor, your home for the most detailed motorcycle reviews on the net. Thank you so much for tuning in today, and if you're new here, I hope you'll consider subscribing if you appreciate content like this. So I am coming to you on this barely above freezing late fall or early winter day here in California to talk about the Honda CRF300L Rally. So today's video is part 2 in a multi-part series of videos about this bike. So if you're really interested in this bike, I'd recommend using my playlist or using my links below and watch the series in the order. Now, my goal with this series, keeping in mind that a lot of people are looking at the 300L Rally as their affordable, lightweight, reliable adventure bike, my goal was to see how far we can improve the bike with a budget of just $1,500 for aftermarket modification. So everything you see here on the bike, including the new suspension, all comes in under $1,500, and I'm going to break that down for you here in a second. Adventure motorcycling doesn't just have to be a game for well-off people where you ride BMW GS's with $2,000 riding suits and all sorts of expensive gear on expensive bikes. This motorcycle is around $6,000 brand new. It's a Honda, so it's never going to break down, and all the gear you see here was purchased on a very strict budget. So let's get into what this cost and how I set this bike up to be a true adventure bike. All right, so here's how we're going to do this today. I'm going to break down for you the cost of the modifications, going to talk about a little bit about why I chose the parts I did and, you know, sort of how they were to install. Then we'll get this thing out on the highway, on the freeway, on the twisty roads, and in the dirt, test this thing out, do some really good real-world testing with it, see if the modifications have really transformed this bike. Keeping in mind the limitations of the stock bike, which I showed in part 1 of the series, the extremely comically, hilariously soft suspension, and some of the lack of crash protection, lack of luggage, things like that. So we've done all that. So without any more jabber, let's get in to start to talk about the changes I made to the bike. So please, if you want to support Big Rock Moto, an easy way to do that obviously is to use the affiliate links in the video description below. Now, with that said, all these parts that I'm using, I wouldn't be showing these parts unless I personally believed in them. And I've been using a lot of these exact parts on other bike builds long before I was a YouTuber or had a program with Rocky Mountain ATV. So just keep that in mind. I wouldn't be showing anything that I wouldn't personally use myself and pay my own money for. And I did pay my own money for some of this stuff actually. So starting with some basic protection. So I put on the Tusk D-Flex Pro handguards, metal wrap-around handguards to protect the clutch and brake levers. And I also put on the Tusk Chubb Big Bar kit. So it's it's a fatter aluminum handlebar as opposed to the very thin steel handlebars that come stock that are very prone to bending. So the kit comes with a conversion because the bike uses 7/8 inch handlebars, and you go up to the larger diameter bar with a little converter or a little adapter that comes with the kit in addition to the handlebars. And the handguards and the handlebars are all designed to work together, and so you get a nice, stiff, strong, protective setup there that's more comfortable than stock. The bars are a little bit taller, which makes standing up a little bit easier because this bike can be a little bit cramped. So those are the changes I made sort of up on the front of the bike. So if I get the editing right in this video, I'm going to put a little spreadsheet here on the left or right to show the breakdown of all these things, what they cost, so you know I'm telling the truth. And of course, the links for everything are going to be in the description. And keep in mind that most of the parts you see here could be used on just about any dual sport bike out there. So let's move on to the tires. So I chose the Tusk D-Sport tires. They're a nice, aggressive, knobby pattern. From other user reports, they're pretty long lasting, and they have pretty good highway manners, as you're about to find out when we go for a ride in the video. They're also very, very affordable. So speaking of cost, rewinding a second, the handlebars and handguards was about 70 bucks for the handguard, 70 bucks for the handlebar kit. The tires, let me see what the tires were, was about 70 bucks for the rear tire and about 60 bucks for the front tire. That's pretty darn good. I know from personal experience that I own a BMW GS, I own a Aprilia Touareg, big. For the GS, a set of tires can sometimes be $400 or $500, not even including installation. So a full set of tires for your adventure bike for under, well under 150 bucks, that's a bargain if you ask me. Now let's talk about luggage. I'm a huge fan of the Tusk luggage. I think it delivers a lot for the money. So I'm using the large Olympus tank bag. I love this tank bag. I've talked about it in other videos. Super easy to use and actually fits on this bike really, really well. And then for the rear bag, I definitely decided to go with a rackless luggage. It keeps the bike slimmer. You don't have to install heavy racks, and it keeps the weight centralized in the bike for better handling. So this is the Tusk Highland X2 system. It's around 80 liters of total storage. So you've got the 25-liter side pockets with the internal dry bags to keep all your stuff dry. You've got these bottle holders or sort of extra pouches here that attach to the bags. Then you've got the top duffel bag. This is the medium duffel. They also sell a larger duffel. It's very, very affordable if you want more capacity up here on the top. It comes with this sort of little, I call it a beaver tail. I don't know if that's the right word, but it comes with this thing that straps over the top here with a MOLLE attachment, and they include this quick draw bag back here, which I really, really like for storing stuff that you want to have during your ride, like maybe some extra energy drinks or some snacks or tools that you want quick access to. I've used this luggage setup on my Tenere 700. Actually, this exact bag came off my old Tenere 700, and I'm a huge fan of it. It works very, very well, especially considering the price point. So the Highland X2 system is about $499. All right, let's get to suspension. That's kind of the elephant in the room a little bit for this bike, because suspension, as I showed before, really, really not rideable for an average sized guy like me riding the bike off-road. Really not usable. So what I did was I addressed the biggest problem first, and then I ran out of budget, which I'll talk about in a second. So I replaced the stock shock with the YSS suspension. I did some research online on Facebook on different user groups for this bike. People spoke highly of the YSS shock. I don't have any affiliation with them, so unfortunately I had to pay full price for this item. It came from overseas. It bolts up, fairly easy to install on these bikes, and they sell different versions with different springs depending on your weight. So I'm around 90 kilograms, and I'm carrying a little bit of luggage, so I got the version set up for that amount of weight. It does have an adjustable preload, and it does have adjustable rebound damping as well, so you can kind of set it up. I dialed in a little bit more preload before I installed it because I knew I was going to be running the luggage. So the suspension performs really quite well now, and we're going to show that here when we go on our ride. Now, unfortunately, with that $655 rear shock, that brought me up to the $1,500 budget, and I didn't want to go beyond that because I'm trying to keep this more of that build that more people can afford. So I didn't do anything to the front suspension. One, because I ran out of budget, but two, because I do have to return this bike to stock to give it back to Honda pretty soon. And taking apart the front suspension is just not something that I really wanted to get into, and then having to return it back to stock. But if I were you, and if you're doing this, I would recommend putting a spring kit and different oil in the front shocks to kind of balance it out a little bit better. Now, there's a few more things that I would do if I hadn't ran out of budget. I'd probably put on some larger foot pegs. I'd probably change the skid plate, get some sort of a beefier skid plate. And beyond that, well, I might do a more comfortable seat. I'd like heated grips, but you're getting into stuff that you don't really absolutely need. But really, the way this bike is set up for this budget, for these exact parts, you could jump on this right now, ride it across country, take it on the backcountry discovery routes, do off-road travel, do adventure riding. It really has everything you need. So with that out of the way, what do you say we get this bike out on the road? All right, let's go ride the modified 300L Rally. So one of the first things I've noticed since I modified it is that, well, one, it's a little bit harder to mount when you have soft luggage on, but that's any motorcycle. But mostly the bike is leaned over really, really far because the rear shock has so much more preload, it's properly sprung, that the kickstand's kind of too short. So the bike's almost tipping over on the side stand, which is kind of annoying. So it makes getting on kind of a chore. So if you're a shorter rider and you're thinking about modifying your suspension, just beware that it can dramatically change the seat height of your bike. This bike is far, far taller now, far, far taller than it was before with the stock suspension. All right, the difference in the seat height is so dramatic that I want to show it here on camera. So let me jump on here. All right, so I'm 5'10", 180 centimeters, 32-inch inseam. I weigh about 90 kilograms or about 200 pounds. I'm on my tiptoes now on this bike, and this is kind of marketed as like a beginner bike or whatever, or for newer riders, shorter riders. But once you modify the suspension and put in a stiffer suspension, it brings the bike way, way up. So this is something that could be a deal breaker for some of you if you're looking at doing this. I mean, if you look, I can flat foot the bike only if I scoot my butt off the seat, and I'm a pretty tall guy. So keep this in mind. This is a major change if you're going to change the suspension on your bike. So the first thing I got to do is I got to go right to the gas station to put some gas in it, because somebody has been riding it and not putting gas in it. It couldn't be me, of course, but so if you live in California, you're lucky you have to deal with these gas nozzles that you have to pull back like this vapor recovery. They're the worst thing ever. Now, one thing I love about this 300 is that it's extremely good on gas. It gets, my computer was indicating 67 miles per gallon on that tank. So it hardly costs anything to put fuel in it, and it goes forever on the stock fuel tank, which is really, really nice. All right, we're out riding the 300. I kind of forgot, number one, I really do like this bike. I forgot how much I like it, but also I forgot how gutless it is. This is full throttle acceleration going up a slight hill, and it really struggles to get to 60 miles per hour or about 100 kilometers per hour. It takes, for me, it's kind of a deal breaker on this bike. Like, for me personally, it's just not enough power to satisfy how I like to ride, quite honestly. But it doesn't mean it's a bad bike at all. It's just, you just have to realize what it is. But it's just so gutless. Like, below 5,000 RPM, there's just, like, that's full throttle. There's just, like, there's so little power there. You know, the bike doesn't really feel like heavy or bulky or anything. The bags are really nice and slim, and they keep the weight close to the bike. That's what's so great about these rackless luggage systems. The tank bag's not in my way. Standing up, I can feel it kind of in my crotch. Just a little bit in my way, but so all tank bags are. The hand guards are really deflecting the wind off my hands, keeping my hands warm. It is cold out here today, pretty chilly. New handlebars feel good. They look good. I know I'm protected. The tires, so the tires actually are surprising me. I thought, because they're kind of an aggressive off-road tire, I thought they'd feel kind of wobbly on the pavement, but they feel really good through these curvy mountain roads so far. Now, once we get on the freeway, that'll be the real test, because I don't think they're going to do very well with the rain grooves on the freeway. All right, so the suspension. So yeah, there's a dramatic difference in the way the bike handles and rides. The suspension feels really good. Of course, I'm just on smooth pavement, so it's hard to say, but it doesn't have that floaty, wallowy sensation that the bike did in stock form. So I think the rear shock is a major transformation. The front is still pretty soft, but it's not as bad as the back. It's a little bit unbalanced now, and I think that could be an issue when we go off-road. I should have done something to the front suspension, but I really wanted to stick to that $1,500 budget, so it just wasn't in the budget, unfortunately. All right, so we're about to jump on the freeway here, but one thing you want to do when you have a rackless luggage system like this, you want to periodically check your straps that they haven't come loose, they're not fraying, they're not going to get stuck in anything, things like that, because they tend to shift around, and you just want to really be aware of that, especially when you're riding off-road, and especially when you load them up for the first time and put them on the bike. The bike's feeling good, we're doing good, so let's jump on the freeway here. It's much warmer down here than at my house. We do have a little bit of a breeze, so we'll see how that is. But otherwise, bike's pretty comfortable to ride, honestly. The seat is okay for the first couple hours. Okay, now it's going to get super windy and super loud, so I hope you can still hear the narration when I get on the freeway here. Full power. Okay, accelerate. Oh, it's very windy, so, you know, on a small bike like this, when you get really windy and you get all these big rigs and the turbulence, it can get a little bit sketchy. It doesn't have the stability of some of the larger bikes, and of course, having knobby tires certainly doesn't help that picture either. Okay, so we're maintaining 72 miles per hour indicated, or about 115 kph. If I'm being honest, I'm not very comfortable. Like, this is not a very nice experience. The bike's moving around a lot. I've got the throttle pinned wide open to go 73, 74. It's about as fast as I can go. And it just doesn't feel stable or very comfortable, you know. I think these smaller bikes, I mean, you can do this, but it's not the best experience. That's wide open, 77, 78, 78, 79. All right, let's hit the dirt with a modified 300L Rally. So we're just riding the last few hundred yards to get here. The suspension is dramatic improvement. So I'll show you that here in a second. And of course we got full knobby tires now as opposed to the stock tires. So we're gonna have, I think this is gonna be a lot of fun. It's like a whole, so it's like a whole different motorcycle, you know, with the new rear shock. I mean, because the thing is with the factory suspension, it's so soft that you can't really ride it in a normal way. But now, so the bike is still really plush and comfortable. It's really soft. I mean, if you're coming off a more aggressive dual sport or a dirt bike, this is still gonna feel like a total couch, like just really plush and soft. But I think that's an okay thing. Let's hit these rocks here. I mean, it just rides so smooth. But now the suspension finally has enough support where you can start to ride a bit more aggressively, and the bike doesn't just let you down like it did in stock form. So yeah, let me slow down here a second to narrate, but the front suspension is still really soft, so you have to keep that in mind. And of course that would be, I mean, I should just go over budget a couple $100 and do something about the front, but since this is not my motorcycle and I have to return it to stock to give it back to Honda in a couple months, I don't really want to do too extensive of modifications. But I'm really impressed with this YSS rear shock. I mean, for $600 and some, that is like a transformational improvement in the bike. The rear end feels really planted and well controlled now. The ergonomics on this bike are still a little bit weird for me. Like, the bars, when I try to stand up, the bars still feel like they're kind of too far back, like in my lap. I don't know why, but so see, the bike doesn't have enough power to really like wheelie the front over little rises and stuff like that, like I was trying to do there. But man, if you're willing to keep the revs up and maintain your momentum, you can haul on this thing pretty good now, honestly. And of course, part of this is also the tires. Having real knobby tires was a huge help. Whoa. So we had a big rainstorm. A lot of these ruts are really fresh, so I've got to be careful. So this rear D-Sport, this rear Tusk tire, I'm happy with it. It hooks up really well. The front tire, I honestly don't know that I would recommend this front D-Sport tire. And I've heard a lot of people say the same thing. It just feels a bit like it kind of wanders around. Like it just doesn't seem to be that stable in the dirt. I don't know why that is. Because it looks like a Dunlop 606 when you look at it, but it just doesn't feel that confidence inspiring. So I like the rear tire. The verdict is still kind of out on the front tire. This bike is so much more fun to ride now. I just can't even tell you how much more fun it is. Don't like how much it leans there, for sure. Take a look, make sure our straps are still good. give them a little snug down. Rear strap. So I don't have a rear rack. You're supposed to have rear rack, but I'm getting away without it. These Test Traverse bags, so I've got camping gear in here, pretty heavy, and man, these bags are great. They work so well, especially for the money. One of the great benefits of being on a lighter weight adventure bike is if you get a dead end or you get on a trail that you didn't really want to be on, they're super easy to turn around because they're just not that heavy. They don't feel like they're always going to tip over. They're just easier to manage overall, you know. So that was a dead end. Some giant ruts. Whoa! Giant ruts here. You don't want to go into that rut. That'll swallow up the whole bike there. So I kind of hate to do this, but this is a real world test. I'm going to push the bike over and let it fall on its side pretty hard. I'm in some soft soil, so probably not going to do any damage. But I want to test out these handguards, prove to you the point that wraparound metal handguards are pretty much essential for off-road riding, unless you want to break your levers. And we'll also see kind of how all this stuff works. So this is going to be a little bit hard to watch, but here she goes. Oh! Doesn't sound nice, does it? But you can see here, so this is soft ground, so the handguard has kind of dug into the ground here, but you can see it's completely protected my brake lever. So there's really almost no chance of the brake lever getting broken. If you've ever been on a ride where you've broken a control lever, it's a very, very difficult situation. So you can see soft luggage, no damage there, nothing really big to worry about. So the bike's kind of downhill, so let's see how it is to lift this thing up. Still kind of a bitch to pick it up. You can see that gets scuffed, but that's okay. Foot peg fills with dirt. Looks like it kind of hits here. Looks like we may have actually broken that. But that's why we're doing this video, to show what happens with this bike. Is it a real adventure bike? So yeah, all this plastic stuff looks really kind of weak here, so looks like that kind of broke there. So definitely I would look into some more rugged skid plate kind of setup down here. Thankfully these plastics are really just cosmetic. But this is what's going to happen in the real world. You're either going to crash or drop your bike when it's full of luggage. So you need to be able to minimize damage to the bike, but also be able to lift it by yourself. All right, well, that was a good real world test. I hope you guys enjoyed going on a ride with me. The temperature is about to drop below freezing here. It's actually a lot colder than it looks, so I'm trying to wrap this up. But I would just say in conclusion, this thing is totally legit. Like, I'm very privileged, very kind of spoiled to own top-end, top-level adventure bikes. And this thing is still really fun and really, really capable on the highway and off-road. When you consider what you're getting for the money, the performance you're getting, the reliability, the low maintenance, the extreme fuel economy, the gentle power delivery, which is good for beginners. I mean, this thing rocks. It's a great little bike for the money. And I think these modifications that we've done here for this very modest budget really, really work. I mean, I would personally take this bike on hard, extended off-road travel. Yeah, I might want a better skid plate. I might do a few little more changes, but really, you could get by with this bike just the way it is. So I hope this video was useful and informative. Stay tuned because I do have a couple more videos planned out for this bike before it goes back to stock and goes back to Honda. So stay tuned for that. If you have questions, comments, concerns, feedback, put that down below and I will get back to you. Other than that, thank you so much for watching. Please support Big Rock Moto. There's ways to do that in the description below. Please ride safe and I'll see you out there.